You scroll through hundreds of job descriptions, but they all sound the same. You spend so much time on every application, but it doesn't seem to matter. You send off application after application, but never hear back. You thought the interview went so well, but it's a no. You jump through all the hoops. The news keeps saying how there are all these employers that are struggling to find people to hire. So why does finding a great job have to be so hard? It doesn't seem very logical or fair. It's not. The system is broken. It's not your fault. The process most people go through to get a job is awful. But here's the good news. The system isn't very smart. In fact, it's downright dumb. It can be beaten. How? Most prospective employers and employees today are using the same old tired strategies that have been around forever. It's like professional camouflage. Everybody just blends into the crowd. But you don't have to be that way anymore. You can get traction. You can stand out from the crowd to unleash your God-given potential, to help a world in need, to do work that matters, to earn what you and your family deserve. You can do this. You're meant to do this. There are bright things on the horizon for you. This is the way. Hey there, welcome to the workshop to get hired fast without settling, getting ignored, or losing hope. My name is Eric Woodard. I'm a high performance and career coach based out of Washington, D.C. And if you're listening to us live, I'm so glad you are. Happy Halloween, by the way, those of you who are celebrating. And if you're watching the replay, you're not quite as cool as the people who are going to see this live, and you're still pretty cool. So I know we've got people from all over the world joining us. If you would, put in the chat, and I want to make sure everybody can hear, put in the chat where you're from and how long you've been on the job search. And that way I'll know for sure that people can hear me. Where you're from and how long you've been on the job search. And we're going to get going from there. So look, folks, if you are, I see you there, Kenneth, New York City for 2 years. If you're somebody who's been on the job search, you know firsthand it's a lot like pounding sand. Jonathan Houston and Rick in North Carolina, and Neil in Minneapolis, and Eric in Houston. It's a lot like waiting on a glacier. Jean-Pierre and Tyler in Charlotte, and Michael in Houston, and Pat in Pennsylvania, and Dave in Seattle, and Derek in Houston. It's a lot like being adrift at sea, Justin in Vermont, and Anthony in Georgia. It's a lot like wandering through the desert, Sky in Dayton. It's sort of like going into an arena, Beatrice in Rochester. It's like looking into an abyss, Gerald in Philly. So glad you're all here. So look, if you are unsure about the direction you want your career to go, Ann in Long Island and Idrissa in Pennsylvania, if you're struggling to find ways to describe what you do, Derwin in Ohio and Asib in New York, if you're uncertain if your resume's any good, Paul in Atlanta, if you're wrestling with how to follow up after you apply, if you're tired of applying and applying and applying and hearing nothing back, if you've been doing interviews that seem to go so great and then you get a big fat no, if you're trapped in a job you don't like, Nicola in the DMV represent, and especially if you're losing hope, this is a great place for you, John in North Carolina. And on the other hand, if you're somebody who's super casual about your career, not willing to do a lot of work, reluctant to really take responsibility for the results you've been getting, if you're just interested in finding a job to make money, if you're stuck in your ways and sort of closed-minded about doing new things, and if you know, especially if you know a lot of the reasons why you haven't been getting a job, if you're unwilling to be authentic, this may not be the place for you. So my commitment to you today, and we're going to go pretty fast, so buckle up, Sandra in New York and Brandon in Columbus. What you're going to learn today, how to get hired fast without settling, getting ignored, or losing hope. I'm going to offer you 4 strategies and 9 tactics so that you can do work that matters and pays what you and your family deserve. And I just want to give you a warning right from the get-go. This is mostly going to be a big, long sales pitch. I'm not going to give you a lot of good content. No. No, that's not true. I'm not going to try and sell you anything on this call, folks. I'm going to invite you to have a call with me towards the end, and the people who choose to work with me do it because the stuff I offer is different than stuff they've heard before, because that stuff that you've heard before probably doesn't work very well. You may hear some new things on this webinar. We'll find out. And the way we're going to do this, Sandra in New York and Ashby in Kennesaw, is if you have questions, put it in the chat. You guys are already super active in the chat, which I love. And if I miss anything, we'll get to it at the end, okay? Because we're going to go pretty fast. So if you don't have something to write with, please get something to write with, Muhammad in Houston. And here we go. So I'm just going to offer you a little bit about who I am, just a tiny bit. I'm going to offer you 4 strategies, 9 tactics. I'm going to invite you to a call if you want to do a call with me, and we're going to have time for Q&A. Sound good? All right, here we go. So who is this guy and why does he think he can help me find a job? Well, first of all, I don't know if I can help you find a job, but I've helped a lot of people. Can I help you find a job? Maybe, probably. I don't know. You'll have to decide. I actually grew up overseas, rich from Spokane and Kylan, Atlanta. I came to the States when I was 17, and I had a really hard time. I transferred college 7 times. This is me in the Midwest wondering why it's so cold. I wound up moving to the island of Guam, where I was a scuba instructor for about 3 years and spent about 10,000 hours underwater, which was awesome. And at one point I was like, my brain's getting a little spongy. I got to do something with my life. And I thought, what would be the most prestigious job I could find? And I thought, well, that must be, we're in an election season right now, so this is pertinent. That must be something like working at the White House. So I took out a piece of paper and I wrote the world's worst cover letter. And I mailed that sucker in to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I'm like, I'm never hearing from those guys. And about a month later, I was going past the Guam post office and the guy came out with an envelope. And he said, Eric, you got a letter from the White House. And I opened it up and it was an internship application. Now, I didn't know what the hell an internship was, but I was really good at filling out applications because I transferred so many times. So I filled that out, set that sucker in, and I was like, I'm never hearing back from those folks. But I had the cool White House envelope, and I thought that was pretty cool. And that sort of inspired me to apply to some grad schools. Hey there, Fatima. And I got into one in DC. I got into George Washington, and I sort of landed with a big bushy haircut. And it was dumpster diving for furniture. And I bought a pair of running shoes. And I ran past the White House one day and I thought, those White House bastards, they never even bothered to let me know about that internship thing. Hey there, Derwin. That's great. Dive Master Cert. That's awesome. They never even let me bother to know about that internship thing. So I found a payphone and I put in a quarter and I got him on the phone. I said, hey, you White House bastards, what about that internship thing? They're like, is this Eric from Guam? I'm like, yeah, but I'm in DC now. They're like, man, we've been trying to get in touch with you. Like, you're supposed to start in the First Lady's office on Monday. So I was like, well, that's interesting. So I got a haircut, I bought some shoes, and I showed up. And again, I don't know your politics on this call, but if your politics aren't like mine, please forgive me. But this is back during the Clinton administration. I wound up working for Hillary Clinton, and she was a good boss. And I wound up getting hired on her staff in Hillary Land and followed her to the Senate. And then the State Department, where I did UNESCO stuff. And then I left Hillary Land and I wound up as director of fellowships and internships at the Smithsonian. And all during this time, both as an early professional myself and helping a lot of other people with their careers, given a lot of talks and a lot of coaching, written a lot of books. I have a lot of pieces of paper that say how awesome I am. I have glowing testimonials. All during this time, I just saw a lot of people running into the same thing of trying to figure out career stuff at every level, in every industry, in many different places in the United States and around the world. So now I coach, and it's awesome. So all this is amazing. And the question you have is, can this guy help me? I don't know, maybe. Let's find out. So let's buckle up here, and I'm going to offer you 4 strategies to get you hired fast. Here we go. Okay, I want you to put this in the chat, everybody, if you would. And we got a nice big crowd today. Tell me what a good resume is about. If you would, put it in the chat. There's a little bit of a delay between when I say stuff and you enter stuff in the chat and it shows up. So this is when I buy a little time, right? So what's a good resume about? Put it in the chat. I'm curious to see if anybody will get it right. Maybe it'll be you. What's a good resume about? Okay, Sarah says telling a story. I like that. I'm not so sure about the ATS. We'll come back to that, right? David says it's clear. Big Ray says it's a work bio. Eric says it's about your skills. Grace says it's about your experience. I'm seeing William says it's your experience, catches attention. I like this. Getting attention about you, says Rich. Okay, I haven't seen the right answer yet. Okay, here it is. Mark says keywords. So a lot of people think a good resume is about you, and that's incorrect. A good resume is about them. You want to be influential with anybody in your life, the first thing you're going to talk about is them. And when I say resume, I mean your cover letter and your follow-up and your networking and your interviews. None of it's about you. It's about them. Okay, now it's perfectly natural that we sort of focus on a resume being about ourselves, because often the first time we did a resume was coming out of school. And in school, it is very much about us. It's our cubby, our report card, our grade, our trophy. And yet, when we move to the working world, it's not about you at all. Right? I see you, Derwin. It's not about it's not about, I love you, Derwin. And it's not about what you have to offer. It's not about you at all. It's about what's possible for them. Okay. And when we move to the working world, see, it's not about us. It's about the constituent, the client, the customer, the shareholder. But, the reason Google gives lunch to its employees is not because the purpose of Google is to feed its staff. They feed their staff so that they'll make better Google. Right? So realize, if you get nothing else from this workshop today, the opportunity is to make it about them. Okay? They think the job seeker, so many think it's my resume. They have that paragraph at the top of their resume saying, my executive summary. It's a lot of words about them. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Make your resume about them, not yourself. Because employers are focused on themselves. That's the question they're asking. They're like, we're us. There's that applicant. How's that applicant? Do they even understand us, right? Make the application about them. All right. So that's strategy number one. Make it about them. Yeah, Derwin, your brand doesn't really matter because that's about you. I would humbly suggest it's about them. Okay. So if I went to a library and I looked at a shelf full of storybooks and I looked on the front cover of those storybooks, there'd be some words on the front cover of those books. What do we call those words? Put it in the chat if you would. There's a name we call those words on the front cover of a book. What do we call those words on the front cover of a book? Well, there you go, Sarah. Sarah got it, right? We call those words titles. David's got it, right? Joshua's got it. Colin's got it. Yeah, titles. Now, isn't it interesting that that's the same term we use to label people in the workplace? Which tells me, just like we might put a title on the front cover of a storybook, we put titles on the story of one's career. And this brings us to strategy number 2. And some of you have already mentioned this in the chat. We want to tell a lot of stories. Tell me if you would, if I were to ask you, what percent of human decision-making is emotional and what percent is logical? Put it in the chat. So is it 50-50, 60-40, 40-60? What percent is emotional and what percent is logical? Put it in the chat. I'm curious to see if anybody gets it right. Right? So Sarah says it's 70. Sarah's quick on the draw there. 70% emotional. I see 90-10, David. Right? 80-20 says, I'm going to mispronounce your name. Joshua says 70. I haven't seen the correct answer yet. Fatima says 70-39. There's a missing. Gerald says 80. Nope. I haven't seen it. Yep. Nope. Okay. So here's the thing, folks. It's 100% emotional. And the reason we know this is because when somebody gets the part of their brain damaged, the limbic system that deals with emotion, they're fine, except that they can't make a single decision. And that's the debilitating part. We make emotions in the limbic system. Emotions are made 100% emotionally. Now, once we make those decisions, we will rationalize them by looking for data and numbers, but the actual decision is emotional. So those of you who hear employers or people here say, you got to put numbers in your resume, right? You got to have to put data. If I was to ask you what your phone number was, I always get in trouble on this because some people are like, I remember. But if I was to ask you what your phone number was on your 5th birthday, some of you would remember, but a lot of you would be like, I don't remember. But if I asked you how you felt on your 5th birthday, you would remember. Right? People don't remember data. They remember feelings. And the way we convey feelings is through stories, right? We can process about 40 bits a second through our conscious logical mind. We can process 20 million bits a second through our unconscious emotional mind. That's how powerful it is. So If you've been relying on a lot of facts in your job search, it's something to look at, right? People don't remember facts. They remember stories. They remember feelings. Make your application have stories, and realize that the title you call yourself is going to vary between industry and organization and geography, location. It's all made up. So perfect. Notice that I'm about to tell a story, right? So perfect example. One time I was going through a stack of applications for a program, and this one woman explained in the thing that she wrote how she'd been in a car wreck the summer before and her arm had been severed. I felt so bad, and what a story. So we accepted her. First day she walks in, 2 arms. Now, it had been bandaged from where it had been partially severed, and they'd reattached it, and she was doing some physical therapy, but she was going to be okay. Was I mad? Of course not. I was so glad she had her arm, and I remember that story to this day. Stories are super, super powerful. Okay, so that's strategy number 2. Here we go. Who knows who this guy is? Put it in the chat if you would, please. Right? Put it in the chat. Anthony says, if you know who this is, put it in the chat. Anthony asks, if you tell stories, isn't it about you and not about them? It's a great point, Anthony. It is a great point, because sometimes the stories could be about them, but notice the story I just told, right? It had me in there, but I was talking about the other person. So it's not, you're not wrong. Okay. So a lot of people are getting this, right? Nicola and Rahini Ashby Zuckerberg, right? Joshua, right? Yeah, this is Napoleon Dynamite. And if you don't know who Napoleon Dynamite is, please stop your job search and go watch Napoleon Dynamite, obviously. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I don't want to give it away. The premise of the movie is Napoleon's a high school kid, and he sort of beats to his own drum. And there's this one scene where he finds himself in front of the entire student body at his school. He's thrust on stage. Now, he's been able to get a cassette tape up to the DJ booth, so he's got music, but he's got to do some sort of performance. Hasn't anything planned. He's just there. So Napoleon proceeds to do the wildest dance you've ever seen. I mean, he just lets it all hang out. It's pretty crazy. And when he's done, he's kind of sweaty and panting, and the student body's sort of like this, and then they erupt in applause. And the reason that works, the reason they get mad applause, is because what Napoleon does is so authentic. And this brings us to the next strategy. Jamie Kern-Lima, the founder of It Cosmetics, says, everybody's a good dancer if they commit fully. And she's right. Okay. And this brings us to strategy number 3, authenticity. Right? You want to be have authenticity in your stuff, right? If you've got a line in there about being proficient in Microsoft Office, yeah, get rid of that, unless that's actually how you talk in real life, right? And if you've, got stuff on there about you're hiding your age or any of that kind of stuff, yeah, stop doing that. There's only one reason they're going to hire us. And it's not your skills. It's not your experience. It's not even if you can do the job the best. It's that they trust you. It's that they trust you can do the job the best. And the way we build trust with others, Brene Brown has written about this, it's through vulnerability. It's through authenticity. People are going to hire you because of who you are, not in spite of it. Now, look, there's a lot of isms out there, racism, sexism. I'm not going to say there's not. And even with that, the reason they're going to hire you, in spite of any of that, is because they trust you. So, and none of this is fair, by the way. I get it. So many try to be perfect on their resume. But here's the thing. I saw some mentions of ATS in there. Guess who humans hire? Humans. Computers don't hire humans, and humans don't hire computers. Right? And those of you who are like, what about the ATS? I just want to let you know, just a little offering. It's a myth, my friends. Right? Different companies use software to sort their stuff, and it's true. And if you've been playing the game of trying to trick the computers with keywords so that maybe you'll get lucky and get through, how's that going? Yeah, I know. So stop doing that, right? The opportunity is to connect with real humans. And the way we do that is through authenticity, right? You want to be human and relatable. Perfect example. One time I was working with this a woman named Nina. And we got to the part of her resume, and I said, Nina, what do you like to do for fun? And she's like, well, that's silly. I don't want to share that. That's not professional. I'm like, okay, what do you like to do? She's like, well, I collect pens. I collect pens. I'm like, well, that's super weird. Let's put that on there. She's like, oh no, I could never do that. So finally we get Nina to put this on her resume that she collects pens. She goes into an interview about a month later. They talk about pens for 30 minutes and she gets the offer. This happens to my clients all the time. I had one recently, a client of mine who put on his resume that he runs marathons. When he went into the interview, they said, we brought you in because you said you run marathons. I had another client recently, she put on her resume at the bottom of it, 2 truths and a lie. She got 2 interviews immediately and 2 offers. And it was because of that. So those of you who are like, well, you know, you have to be professional. Yeah. How's that working? Okay. How is that working? Okay. So let's get to strategy number 4. That's right. Authenticity is your superpower. Strategy number 4. This is Abraham Lincoln. He says, give me 6 hours to cut down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And this brings us to the next strategy, which is consistency, right? Those of you who are like, have these bursts where I'm like, I sent out 50 applications this week and now I've got to like, this isn't about working hard. This is about working smart. Okay. And so you want to have real consistency with your stuff, which means you're going to want to have a system that supports you in that consistency, right? When somebody's not consistent, it's not that they're lazy. It's not that they're procrastinating. It's just that they just don't have a system. The reason grocery stores open on time is because they have a system for opening on time, right? So remember, you want to up your quality first. And then once you get your quality of your stuff to a certain amount, you want to be consistent in terms of the quantity. And if what you're doing isn't working, iterate, right? Anybody that says there's one way to do any of this, yeah, that's not my experience, right? Different things work better for different people. And some things tend to work better for everybody. There's no such thing as a failed experiment. And remember, this isn't about you. Your feelings aren't facts, right? This is about the systems that you have. Okay, so how do you put all of this to work? And I know I'm answering, there's quite a bit of activity here in the chat here, which I may be missing. So please come back to me with something if I miss it and it's super urgent. How do you put all of this to work? Okay, let's get into the tactics. 9 tactics. Here we go. All right, my friends. If you get nothing else from this workshop, and especially if you're watching the replay, I want you to come back to me. Okay. So if you've been, working on your bonsai tree or something, come back to me. Okay. This is something for the chat. Let's say there's a lake and in the middle of the lake, someone's drowning and they're surrounded by other people in little boats. Okay. Somebody's in the middle of the lake drowning and they're surrounded by other people in little boats. If that was a job search, who's the person drowning? Put it in the chat if you would, please. Kat says, I was once told I didn't get a job because I wasn't a middle-aged black man. Kat, that's illegal in most countries. And sorry that happened to you. And, if that's how somebody's operating, you may not want to work for them anyway. Nothing against middle-aged black people, by the way. Yeah. So put it. So, okay, we've got some things here. So Josh says the job seeker, right? Harold says the applicant, right? The job seeker. So yeah, I haven't seen the right answer yet, right? So they feel like William says I'm the one drowning in the job search. I haven't seen the right answer yet, right? Yeah, I see there, Kat. Haven't seen the right answer yet. Okay, so here, Charles. Thank you, Charles. Okay, Charles got it right. It can feel like, there you go, Brian. It can feel like as job seekers, we're the one drowning, when in fact, we're the one in the boats. And the reason we know it's the employer that's the one that's actually drowning is they've told us. They put out a job description to say, help, we're drowning. We're drowning. We're drowning in work. We need help. The people in the boats are the applicants. Now, some of those applicants, and I'm curious if this is you, maybe like, I'm the one that can help you. I'm the one that can help you. And the person who's drowning in the water, the employer is like, well, maybe you're just trying to convince me. The minute you say something like, I'm the best for you, you rob an employer of the opportunity to come up with that themselves. So look through your stuff, my friends. How often in cover letters do you say, this is why I would be great for you? If you've been saying that, stop it. Whether they take your hand or not, there's a lot of people drowning. And there's also a lot of other people in the boats, okay? You're not the one drowning, so don't act that way. And this gets to mindset, right? So many people are like, I hope they pick me. Realize they'd be lucky to get you. They're the ones drowning. You want to place all of this from a place of service, right? When you look through job listings, this isn't, well, do I want that job? Do I want that job? I mean, that's part of it, but a much stronger way is to come from a place of service. Can I help? What they think about you, what the recruiter thinks about you, what the employer thinks about you is none of your business, because you're more committed to serving than looking good. Again, this is why talking about ourselves, yeah, we don't like this. It's not about us. It's about them. It's about what's possible for them, right? People, like those of you who are like, well, you really got to sell yourself. Yeah, that's weird. Don't do that. We've gone over this historically, my friend. Selling people is weird, and buying people is worse, right? This isn't about anybody buying you or you selling yourself. This is about showing them what's possible. Okay. So some of you may have seen, so this is tactic number 2. Some of you have seen the show Deadliest Catch. And for those of you who haven't, it's a fisherman in Alaska. They're on a pitching deck and it's really icy. And if they fall overboard, they die in like 30 seconds because the ocean's so cold. But what they do is they fish for crabs by putting these big steel cages on the bottom of the ocean with a little bit of bait. And the crab comes along and says, oh, free lunch. And Bob the crab goes in. And then his buddy Charlie comes along and says, look at Bob. Bob's got free lunch. And they go in. And more crabs join. Eventually, the bait is very quickly gone. It's eaten up. And yet more and more crabs continue to join. And you might ask, well, why is that? Why don't the crabs just crawl out? Here's why. Instinctively, crabs like to be with other crabs. They feel safer. And so once a crab's in there, even if a crab's like, there's no more food, guys, I'm out of here, the other crabs will pull them back in. They'll even pull off one of their limbs. They'll even do a crab murder. They'll kill their buddy crab just to keep them in the cage, because crabs feel safer when they're with other crabs. And of course, it's the most risky thing ever because they all get pulled up and become dinner. And this brings us to tactic number 2, your environment. Right? Most people don't even consider optimizing their environment, and it's so important. This gets to the idea of reference groups, right? You're the average weight, income, education, happiness of the 5 people you hang out with most. And so if your environment isn't optimized for your job search, it's a real issue. And so the opportunities to set up boundaries, some of us have family members that are just like, really, you should just settle, right? You should just take what you could get, or you should feel ashamed that you don't have a job. Any of that kind of stuff, you got to clean that up, or at least protect yourself from it, because it has more of an influence than you could possibly imagine. You want to safeguard it. Okay, let's go on to tactic number 3. Sometimes I'll talk to clients and I'll say, what kind of job do you want? And they're like, I want to help people. And I'm like, that's beautiful. And it's super vague. I'll ask them, how much money do you want to make? And they'll be like, anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000 a year. I'm like, that's great. And again, super vague. It's hard to hit a blurry target. And this takes us to the next tactic, which is clarity. You want to have some clarity around like what you want and what you can do. Because if you don't, how can a potential employer understand how you can help them, right? A lot of people, they don't have clarity around their salary, their occupation, their goals, and it's vital. This has to do with the reticular activating system, right? Bruce Lee has a cool quote, right? Be careful what you tell yourself because your brain is listening. Or like you drive a new car off the lot and you're like, nobody's got this car. And then all of a sudden you see 4 of those cars. Our brain will literally find what we tell it to look for. And if we don't specifically tell it what to look for, it won't find it. It's hard to find job helping people. It's hard to know what kind of people, how will I help them, right? Then our brain can see that a little bit more, right? See that a little bit more. Okay, here we go. Let's get on to tactic number 4. Okay, this is for the chat. You guys are hanging with us. You guys are great. I love all the activity here. If I went to the store and I bought one of these things, what would I be buying? Put it in the chat. Latanya says she loves crabs, right? If I went to the store to buy this, what would I be buying? Put it in the chat if you would, please. What would I be buying if I went to the store and I bought one of these things? So David says a tool. Sarah says a drill, literally. Joshua says Sarah's nervous. She's like, he's got some tricky answer, right? Let's see, a vacuum. Fatima says it's a vacuum. Gil says a cordless drill. Okay, I haven't seen the right answer yet. The ability to insert a screw. Not bad. Okay, so here's the thing. When I go to the store and buy this, I'm actually not buying a drill because I don't need this. Colin says something useless. I don't need this lying around my house. I don't need this sitting in my garage. What I actually need is a hole. I'm buying a hole. And actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I don't need a hole in my house. What I really need is a place to put the hook. And actually, I don't need a hook hanging out on my wall. That's going to gash my arm open. What I really need is a place to hang the picture. And actually, I don't actually need a picture hanging on my wall. What I really want is the feeling I get when I look at the picture of my family that's hanging on the hook, that's in the hole that was made by the drill. And this gets us to the next tactic. Give them safety, right? Most job seekers are just focused on themselves and it's a hot dumpster fire. Okay. Those who are actually focused on the employer, a lot of times they're talking about the drill when the opportunity is to talk about the thing that keeps them up at night when they go to sleep. If you can, no pun intended, drill down to that and make them feel that, you're going to make them feel safe. And when you make them feel safe, they're going to trust you. And when they trust you, they're going to hire you. This isn't about your skills. This is about making them feel seen, heard, and understood so they feel safe, so they'll trust you, so they'll hire you. Okay? You want to get really clear about what they like, want, or need. What keeps them up at night? How can you make them feel seen, heard, and understood? All right. Let's get on to tactic number 5. We are rocking and rolling. This is a copy my resume. It's like a model home of resumes, right? And this brings us to tactic number 5 is the paper. Resumes, cover letters. Now look, folks, resumes are stupid. They really are. The idea that we're going to boil our whole life down to a couple pieces of paper and somebody's going to judge us based on that paper is absolutely ridiculous. And if you can get your stuff, your paper put together, it can get you through to talking to live people, which is actually what we're after, right? So many people are like, well, I use best tactics with my resume. Stop doing that, right? You don't want your resume to look like everybody else's. You want yours to look different because when you look like everybody else, it's professional camouflage. Realize that it's just a communication piece. Everybody's got an opinion about the right way or the wrong way. And there is no one right way. The only right way is the way that works for you. You want to communicate with potential employers in a way they cannot ignore. That's what we're after here. Okay. For instance, I've got hyperlinks in my resume. Do you? If not, put them in there. Most people don't have them. It can get their attention. All right. Okay, here we go. On to tactic number 6. If a job application is submitted, but there's no follow-up, does it even make a sound? Now, some of you are saying, but I follow up. I'm not talking about after the interview. I'm talking about after the application. And some of you are like, but how do I know who to follow up with? There's a lot of tools out there, folks, and you could make a guess at their email or their LinkedIn. And I guarantee that if you had a loved one's life on the line, you would figure out how to get in touch with somebody by the end of that day, right? So follow up. And some of you are like, well, isn't it pushy to follow up? Let's go back to the drowning person, right? If you were in the boat and somebody was face down in the water and you said, hey, do you need help? And they didn't move. You wouldn't be like, ooh, I don't want to follow up because I might be too pushy. No, you'd jump in the water, you'd swim over to them, you'd yell, you'd splash, you'd spin over, lock lips, give them mouth to mouth. And if all of a sudden they woke up and they said, lady, I'm just snorkeling, you'd be like, my bad. But you'd be willing to risk looking bad in order to make sure that they didn't drown and die. And it's the same thing with employers, right? They're big boys and girls and adults, right? They can let you know if they don't want to hear from you, right? You want to show them. People believe what you show them more than what you tell them. So you want to show them that you're not messing around. Darren Hardy, who's the founder, used to be former publisher of Success Magazine, redheaded white guy in a shiny suit. It's exactly what you would think, right? He talks about when he was younger and he was a realtor, when you could tell on the MLS when people who are selling houses, when their contracts expired with their existing realtor, they would be open for business. And so a lot of realtors would call in mid-morning and say, hey, are you looking for somebody to help sell your house? Darren would show up at 5 a.m., full suit, knocking on their door with a clipboard and say, hey, you're trying to sell your house. My name's Darren. Let's make that happen. He'd be like, who the hell are you? And if they didn't sign up then around mid-morning, he'd send like a big gift basket. And if that didn't work, around early afternoon, one of his associates would show up with a sold sign and hand it to him and say, "You're going to need this when Darren sells your house." And Darren said he lost about 1 out of 5 for being too much, and he got the other 4 because people were like, "If you're going to work as hard to sell my house as you do to get my business, my house is going to be sold in no time." And they were right. Okay, so you want to follow up. You're serving cake. They can say they don't want any cake, but it's not going to keep you from offering the cake. And by the way, your ability to see, hear, and understand them and to figure out what they need and help them achieve what they want is the cake. Initiative is rewarded. Show them, don't tell. I can't tell you how often I see paragraphs at the top of resumes saying, "I'm a real go-getter and I take initiative and I take risks." And I'm like, great. Did you follow up? Nope. Okay. Tactic number 7. Here we go. This is a big one. Networking. Ask for help. If I went and I asked all of you to look at your Google contacts or wherever you keep your contacts, and let's say you had 1,000 of them, how many of them would know that you're looking for a job? And some of you were like, "Well, I posted it on LinkedIn 3 months ago." Well, that was 3 months ago. And they would have had to go to LinkedIn that day and go to your post. Doesn't count. How many of them would know what was going on with your job search as of last week? How many of them would know that you need help? Asking, you ever go to the Academy Awards and they get up there to accept a big prize and they're like, "Yeah, I got nobody to thank." It's kind of awkward. No, that doesn't happen. Right? They're like, "I got to thank this person and this person." Then they start playing the music and they're like, "I got to this." And they pull the cane with the hook. And right? People who achieve greatness ask for help. And asking for help isn't needy or creepy. Asking for help makes you look strong because only people who are confident are willing to ask for help. Vulnerability builds trust. Trust is the reason you're going to get hired. So you want to ask for help. When you ask others for help, it shows them that their help is worth something. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask for it. Asking people for help is a gift. And when you do that, you allow people to invest in you. And thereby your success becomes their success. It's a big deal. Those of you who've been on the job hunt for a long time, my invitation to you is ask for help, please. And for those of you who are like, "Well, my network's not in my industry." Yeah, they're married to people who are. They have friends who are. This isn't about knowing the right people. It's just knowing people. People like to help people. I bet you've helped people. How did that feel? Exactly. Okay. No one-offs, right? You want to have a system for asking for help. If you asked Bob for help 3 months ago, yeah, Bob's already moved on. He hasn't heard from you. He figures you're good, right? If Bob knew you were still looking for help, he might be giving you help more. Okay, so here we go. Final tactic. Let's see here. Can we get a copy of, Shannon asked, can we get a copy of the slides? You know what? There's a replay that's going to go around, Shannon. I appreciate your asking for that. Let's see here. I'm looking at some of these more. Can I go back to the last tactic, Ashby? Yeah, number 4. We're going to go over them, Ashby. When others' help is appreciated, to thank them a card's well. Yeah, it's fine. DMM, like you can thank people. And the danger there is it doesn't have to be transactional. Like a card's, sure, card's really nice. But people want to help not because you're going to send them flowers or you're going to do a favor for them. They want to help because it affirms who they are. It's a gift, right? When I've helped people in the world, I feel better about myself. So this doesn't have to be like, you do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. That actually kind of messes it up, actually. Okay, tactic number 8, interviews. Who would like to know the best interview advice in the world? I'm about to give it to you. Here it is. You ready? Buckle up. Don't answer their questions. If you guys have been going into interviews focused on answering people's questions, please stop doing that because they don't care. Right? Those of you who have given interviews know this firsthand. Nobody's trying to get information out of you in an interview. They've already got that through other means. What they're trying to get a sense of, the reason we're putting strangers into a room and having some of them judge the other is to get a sense of whether they can trust you. So don't fixate so much on answering their questions. Instead, focus on the answers you're going to give, regardless of the questions that they ask. Focus on the stories you're going to tell. Use their questions as an excuse to tell the stories and give the answers that are going to give them safety. Your purpose in an interview is not to perform. Your purpose in an interview is to connect. Now, look, sometimes there are technical interviews. Well, they'll say, they'll ask you a technical thing. Sure, give the technical answer. That's fine. What I'm talking about is behavioral questions. Tell me about a time, all that kind of stuff. You want to make them feel seen, heard, and understood. And you don't do that by answering their exact questions. You do that by telling them stories and giving them answers that are going to give them safety, that are going to help build trust. So focus on the answers you're going to give, not the questions they ask. Okay, final one. We're on to the final tactic here, and this is offers. So often I'll talk to people on the job hunt, and they're like, I'm like, well, how's your applications going? They're like, well, Eric, you got to understand, I'm very particular about where I apply. I'm like, that's interesting. What's up with that? They're like, well, you see, if I apply and I get the job, then I have to move my family to Connecticut and blah, 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 blah. Stop. You don't have to worry about, one, you're qualified for a job or you want a job unless and until you have an offer. And here's the thinking on that. They're going to have an opinion about whether you're qualified. So it's fine for you to ruminate and sort of muddle in your head whether you're qualified for a job, and it doesn't matter because they're going to have an opinion. Two, unless and until you get the offer, it's natural that you might think, do I want this job? But until you get the offer, you're sort of negotiating with yourself. And so realize that the point to be discerning about whether you want a job is not at the application stage. It's when you get the offer. And that's a phone call, right? Because they can say, well, here's the offer. And you can be like, given that you want me to do this and 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 this, how can I accept this offer? We don't know what they'll say, right? We don't know what they'll come back with. All right. You want to apply liberally from a place of service. You might get into a process and love it more than you think you would, or vice versa. Okay. So write all this down. So glad you're all here. 4 strategies, 9 tactics. This is how you get hired fast. So some of you are thinking, well, gosh, this is amazing. This is different than the other stuff I've heard before. Thank you for noticing. And some of you are like, I'm going to go do this on my own. And I wish you well. And some people do that. And sometimes I hear from them about 6 months later and they say, it's not working. And then I look at their cover letter and it's all about them. I look at their follow-up and they're out and it's all about them. And then they wind up working with me, right? Others of you who are right now who are like, you know what, this is super different than what I've experienced before. Like, you know, I've been waking up every morning hoping for something different. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And maybe this is the thing that's going to change. That's going to help me get different results than the results I've been getting by doing what I've been doing. So if you're having that thought, let's schedule a call. And I'm going to put this in the chat. And I actually have a ton of time tomorrow and I've got some time next week. So people have already been booking calls with me. I've already seen it pop up. So book some time. My only request is if you book time, keep the meeting, okay? Because when you book time, you keep others from booking time. And if others are serious and they want to get help with this and you book time and you're kind of just casual and not serious about it, I don't want you to book the time. I want you to go do this and do this on your own, okay? The reason you want to book a call for me is you want to get this handled and you value your time more than money and you want to get this done. There's no strings attached to this call. Like if we get on the phone and you're like, you know, and I don't think I can help you, I'll tell you that. And if I think I can, I'll tell you that too. But there's no strings attached. So book time with me if you'd like. I'd be curious to know what's going on with you and what we can make happen. And it is now time for some questions. So I'm going to change this so you can see the full width of my gigantic head. And who's got some questions? I see Kenneth. Kenneth says, can you give an example of what you say in a thank you email that's not all about them? So Kenneth, I'll do it right now. Kenneth, the fact that you took time out of your day to come to the Get Hired Fast workshop says so much about how serious you are in your career. It's really a demonstration that you take your career seriously and that the work you do in the world matters. Thank you for all of that. Now, Kenneth, that's all true, by the way. And did you notice I didn't talk about myself once? That's how you do it. I hope that serves you, Kenneth. What is the fee for my service? You know what? When I work with people, I work with them for 12 weeks or less, and they get hired fast, and they pay me in all sorts of different ways. But you're going to get some information about that, Joshua, and you can check that out. I will say, you know, sometimes I'll work with people, and I'll be like, you know, they want to make $120,000 a year or something. And that works out to about $500 a day. So the opportunity cost is of you being out of work is $500 a day, which means that if working with somebody like me, you can get hired in about 7 days faster. That means it's a wash. So you're so welcome, Justin. You're so welcome. DMM, can you share more examples of what a resume about them looks like? Yeah, and this is one of the things I work with clients on DMM. What you're going to do is you're going to basically get really clear about what they want, and you're going to elevate those ideas in your resume. That's what a resume about them looks like. Can you share? Oh, I just did that one. I hope that makes sense, DMM. Laurel says examples of great resumes and cover letters would be sweet. So that's one of the things that I share with my clients, Laurel. I will say that, there is no, I mean, I have I'm a grumpy old man on this, and, everybody's got an opinion about resumes. I'm not a big fan of big blocks of text at the top of resumes, Laurel, that are talking all about me. I'm not a big fan of key accomplishments. Basically, that's somebody trying to trick a computer, and that doesn't work in my experience. Those of you who have hired people know what's the first thing you look at on a resume. Where are they now, or what have they done most recently? So a good resume starts with experience, and it's experience that allows them to see what's possible for them based on what the miracles you've created in other places. I hope that helps, Laurel. Thanks, Eric. What's your opinion of editing your CV for each application? Great question. If a good resume is about them, then if you sent the same resume to more than one employer, at least one of them would be misaddressed. So this doesn't have to be like an act of Congress. This doesn't have to be like, a 3-hour ordeal, but the opportunity to take like 15, 20 minutes and put ideas in your resume that are important to them, that makes a huge difference. Is this stream recorded? Rawia, it sure is. Okay, let's see here. What I do when they ask how much money you want. Oh, okay. So when they're asking how much money you want to make, Antonio. So again, it depends on the exact situation. I actually had a couple clients this week get offers, and when we were negotiating offers and we were dealing with this exact situation. So if somebody says, hey, would you accept, let's just say 100,000, would you accept 100,000 for this job? First thing I'm going to do is make them feel seen, heard, and understood. I'm going to say, wow, 100,000. That's quite an offer. Hear that you're offering me 100,000. I might be a little savvier than that, but say something like that. Then you're going to get curious. Can I ask you a question? They're going to say yes. Given that you want somebody who can do this and 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 this, how can I accept that for 100,000? And we don't know what they'll say. If they may say something like, well, that's all we have in our budget. You could be like, sure, all you have in your budget. Can I ask you about that? Sure. What do you mean? See, we can just get curious. And even if it becomes really clear that 100,000 all they can offer, you'd be like, hey, understand all you can offer is 100. Can I ask you something? Sure. What else can you offer? See, the opportunities to be curious. When we live in the land of judgment, it's really limiting. Learning or knowing is the enemy of learning. So in a job hunt, we want to live in a land of curiosity. We want to live in a land of possibility, right? And if we come to an impasse on an offer, that's fine. They can let us know if that changes. Okay, Verlin, what about how to answer a question about your current comp? Yeah, you could say, you could tell them, or because what you make in your current job really has no bearing on what you're going to make in their job. And if they're like, well, we're going to base we pay you based on what you're making now, you can be like, yeah, that's interesting. What's your thinking on that? They're different jobs, right? And it's just one of those things in sort of job searching that everybody just sorts of saying, like, what's the connection? I'm doing different things for them. What I'm going to be doing for you is at a higher level because there's so much more possibility for you. Anyhow, am I also a headhunter? Gerald, I am not a headhunter. And just in general about recruiters, I know a lot of recruiters, they're nice people, and there's a little bit of a conflict of interest because recruiters work for the employers. So those of you who've been working with recruiters, very nice people, hopefully, at the end of the day, the reason you don't hear back from them and they just sort of drop you like a microphone is because they're not working for you. They're working for the employer. And they're always going to side with the employer. Okay. That's the issue I have with headhunters. And a lot of them aren't very responsive because of that. Any suggestions on how to avoid being judged on ageism for a 50-year-old plus applicant? So Beatrice, just so you know, I'm a member of that group. And I get this a lot, right? Those of you who are like, I'm not going to put the date of graduation, or here's my other favorite one. People say, I love this one. Don't put any experience on your resume more than 15 years ago. You know who tends to say that? People who don't have more than 15 years experience, right? So like, yeah, I mean, the reason they're going to hire you, Beatrice, is because they trust you. It's not about how old you are. It's just not. That's not a thing. I mean, sure, there's ageism and racism and sexism. I get it. And at the end of the day, the reason they're going to hire you is because they trust you. And it's never the scandal. It's always the cover up. So if I looked at your resume, Beatrice, and I couldn't tell whether you were 30 or 50, that's a problem, because basically you're starting your job search by saying, I don't trust you not to judge me on my age, but you can trust me. It doesn't work, right? Authenticity is your superpower. It's never the scandal. It's always the cover up. They're going to hire you because of who you are, not despite it. Okay, let's see here. So many great questions. You're welcome, Laurel. Let's see here. Norval, given your overall knowledge and expertise, what in your journey has been pivotal change done in interviews, discussion, future employers? The key that made, yeah, I'll tell you the key, Norval. It's been making it about them. Could you recommend a company to write a cover letter and a new resume? Mario, so here's the thing on that. I'm not a big fan of resume writers because they basically do the fishing for you. The opportunity is for you to learn how to fish. That's what I help clients with, resumes and cover letters and all of it. But rather than me do it, you can do it. It's going to be more authentic. And what did Eisenhower say? It's never battle plans are useless, but it's the battle planning that's indispensable. Right? We want to teach you how to battle plan. I can give you battle plans. It's not going to help you. But if you learn how to do the battle planning, it's everything. What if you're unemployed? How do you discuss that? Yeah, there's different ways, LaTanya. I mean, basically you can say, yeah, I'm on the job hunt right now. There's nothing shameful about that. So many questions. Brandon, any suggestions sort of related? Any suggestions on a time gap in your resume? Yeah, if there's any consulting or contract stuff you've done in there, that's fine. Those of you who have a lot of months on your resume, you can get rid of those. You don't need them. So many great questions, folks. Look, there are a few people that had sent questions in ahead of time, and I just want to make sure we get to those. Michael says, how can you tell if a job posting is for an actual job? You can't. I mean, a sure way to do that, Michael, is to reach out to a live human and they'll tell you. That's a great way. Ronnie asks, if it seems many employers right now are paying more attention to the gap than a resume and one's experience. I don't know, Ronnie. That could be one of those stories we tell ourselves that's not particularly useful. I bet if you were the best person for the job and you had a 3-year gap and they trusted, this isn't just you, Ronnie, it's everybody. If they trusted that you were the best person for the job, you'd get the job. They don't really care about the gap. What they care about is can they trust you? And if the gap makes them nervous, then that's an issue. But if you can just say, yeah, I was taking care of my sick mom, or I was taking a break, or I was going to school, or whatever. Or you can just say, I mean, a really powerful way, why do you have a 3-year gap in my resume? Because I wanted to. I mean, that's a great answer, right? Because the reason they're going to hire, you can even say, look, we could talk about my 3-year gap, or we could talk about what's possible for your company. See how I'm making it about them? What's the number one thing you can do to stand out from over 100 applicants? Laurel asks. Well, Laurel, it's a lot of the stuff we talked about. It's making it about them, right? It's making it about them. It's making them feel seen, heard, and understood. So many people are out there trying to look good. Don't do that, right? Don't do that. And I see you there, friend freelancer, talking about ableism. You're absolutely right. So look, folks, I'm going to put this link in the chat one more time. I've seen a bunch of you sign up. If you're looking for help with your resume, cover letter, follow-up, networking, or just you feel really alone doing this and you feel stuck, think about how much it's costing you to be on the job hunt and schedule a call. Or you can keep doing this on your own. Because the only mystery here is time. You're going to find a job. I guarantee you will. The only question is how long will it take? And the reason people invest in working with a guy like me is sort of like going to the gym, right? You can go to the gym and lift weights and you'll get muscles eventually, or you can get a trainer and you're going to get bigger muscles faster. It's the same thing with this, right? If you're interested in like not wasting time, and especially if every day you're on the job hunt, it's costing you $500, $600, $700, like let's get this handled. You don't have to do this on your own. Book a call and let's get this sorted. And either way, my friends, I am so cheering for you. I'm rooting for you. You can figure this out. There are bright things on the horizon for you. So without any further ado, I just thank you for being here. If you haven't already booked a call, let's get that handled. And I just wish you all the best, my friends. Thank you so much for being here, and take care of yourselves.